We'll dive into the topic of today's video in just a moment, but before I do, let me ask you a quick question. Do you enjoy telling someone, "I told you so"?
Doesn't everybody?
Of course you do. And J.J. Abrams himself has provided us with all the ammunition we need to do that in a recent interview with Collider. We are going to look at that interview in a few minutes, but before we do, let's set the stage for all this by taking a quick trip down memory lane. Because, of course, for years we Star Wars fans have been called numerous terrible names simply for calling out Disney's shitty attempts at Star Wars movies.
What'd you think? Well, what are you saying I should do? Take out the flashbacks? Rewrite the opening? I could do that.
Burn it!
You dirt-eating piece of slime! You scum-sucking pig!
The pattern has been fairly consistent. Star Wars fans make a point about the Disney films and the Disney shills in the media who will do anything for access, perform impressive feats of multitasking by simultaneously licking Disney's boots and wagging their fingers at the lowly fans. Because, of course, journalists these days love speaking truth to power, and what better way to do that than by attacking regular people in defense of multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Take that, you freaky piece of shit!
All right.
One of the long-running complaints of the Star Wars fandom was the fact that there was clearly no plan on Lucasfilm's behalf when it came to the sequel trilogy. They were making things up as they went, so the whole thing felt like a disjointed mess. The wokesters and Reylos who love those films have long claimed this was debunked, but as we'll see in a minute, J.J. Abrams himself has confirmed that this was the way things were done. And now we all know what time it is.
Maybe she won't rub it in my face.
I told you so, I told you so. I told you so, I told you so, I told you so.
In order to avoid being accused of taking Abrams out of context, I'm going to show you the whole clip of his interview, interrupting with a snide remark from time to time.
One of the things I liked about the Star Wars franchise that you guys did was that the creative handoff between you and Rian Johnson, which I felt, it was letting filmmakers take their own stories and take the story where they wanted to go, and I felt that played out in a really interesting way. But I know not everyone feels that way, and I'm curious for you, as the person who helped get that foundation off the ground and also concluded it, do you feel like that trilogy would have benefited from planning out a very strict 3-movie story from the very beginning? Or do you enjoy that kind of creative freedom to kind of take the characters different ways and kind of see how it goes?
Before I let JJ answer, I just wanted to mention really quickly here how absolutely absurd it is that we're even having this discussion. Writing any story is an insanely convoluted process which requires lots of planning and tinkering. Just think about how Grandmaster George Lucas had the foresight to make his original trilogy episodes 4, 5, and 6 instead of starting at 1. Just think about how well those movies fit in with one another. That's because they each serve a purpose. George Lucas had a plan. Writing a follow-up to that meticulously plotted out story, one of the most important myths within our culture, should take a significant amount of time and plotting. To think that somebody would approach such a project flying by the seat of their pants is the height of arrogance. But that's just par for the course in Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars. Keep this in mind when we listen to JJ's answer here.
I've been involved in a number of projects that have been, in most cases, series that have ideas that begin the thing where you feel like you know where it's going to go, and then sometimes it's an actor who comes in. Other times it's a relationship that, as it's written, doesn't quite work, and things that you think are going to just, be so well received, just crash and burn, and other things that you think like, oh, that's a little small moment, that's a one episode character, suddenly become a hugely important part of the story. And I feel like what I've learned as a lesson a few times now, and it's something that especially in this pandemic year, working with writers, the lesson is that you have to plan things the best you can.
I reiterate, it's ridiculous that we're even talking about this. This is writing 101. If you don't have a plan, then you don't have a story. And if you don't have a story, then why are you making a movie? The answer, of course, is because Disney wanted to show some lightsabers and spaceships on the screen in order to make a bunch of money. And I don't even blame them for that. They have to make back what they earned. The blame falls on Kathleen Kennedy for this one. The priority should have been on telling a coherent story, but no. They were too preoccupied with things like their stupid Forces Female t-shirts to put forth the minimum effort in story. JJ hesitates and pauses a lot in his answer here, and I believe he's struggling not to throw Kathleen Kennedy under the bus. You can practically see the gears in his head turning.
And you always need to be able to respond to the unexpected. And the unexpected can come in all sorts of forms. And I do think that, there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going.
I'm just amazed at how this guy is still a respected storyteller in Hollywood. How is it that he isn't laughed out of every storytelling job he interviews for moving forward? Yeah, I know, the Disney sequel apologists will say something about how Force Awakens made $2 billion, but I'll humbly remind you that it was basically a repackaged version of A New Hope, and that without a coherent plan to answer his mystery boxes, well, that's what led to Rian Johnson. Kennedy and her directors should be out on their asses, because anything, any plot, any story whatsoever would have made billions of dollars just because it had Episode 7 in its title.
And there are projects that I've worked on where we had some ideas, but we hadn't worked through them enough. We had sometimes we had some ideas, but then we weren't allowed to do them the way we wanted to. I've had all sorts of situations where, you plan things in a certain way, and you suddenly find yourself doing something that's 180 degrees different. And then sometimes it works really well, and you feel like, wow, that really came together. And other times you think, oh my God, I can't believe this is where we are. And sometimes when it's not working out, it's because it's what you planned. And other times when it's not working out, it's because it didn't. It's like you never really know. But having a plan, I have learned in some cases the hard way, is the most, critical thing, because otherwise you don't know what you're setting up. You don't know what you're, what to emphasize, because if you don't know the inevitable of the story, you're just as good as your last, sequence or effect or joke or whatever, but you want to be leading to something inevitable.
No shit.
It seems to me that the Star Wars sequel trilogy is not a good place to be learning these basic lessons. I mean, this isn't a high school project, this isn't a TikTok video, it's a sequel to Star Wars, a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and the fact that Kathleen Kennedy greenlit this crap approach is damning evidence.
You're what the French call les incompetents.
How badly does somebody need to fundamentally misunderstand Star Wars to think that the bulk of longtime fans would be okay with surface-level shit like this? I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Star Wars is not about the lightsabers, or the laser guns, or spaceships. Those things are really cool, but they're just window dressing. The beating heart of Star Wars is the story, which speaks to us all, even all these decades later. That's why The Mandalorian works for most people, because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni actually make plans.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
For years, Lucasfilm and their pals in the media have gleefully taken potshots at the fans. We've been called toxic and horrible for years, but it seems that they were just puffing themselves up, trying to intimidate and confuse people into joining their side. Over the years, they've gradually conceded the points the fans have been making all along. One has to wonder if it's not because of the state of Disney's financials. The earnings reports have not been stellar and the stock prices have been stagnant. I have to wonder if they're not sensing a turning of the tide. One last thing before I go. The result of our poll is in. The spaceship has finally been renamed. From this day forward, the flagship of our burgeoning fleet is to be known as the Fandom's Revenge. Many thanks to the multiple people who suggested it, because I think it's a great name, and thanks for everyone who voted. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty